Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be sewing. I'm so excited for another sew along here on the channel. I hope that you all are too. So for this video, I'm not going to do a preview video where I go through the pattern and all the details of it. I'm just going to review them really quickly for you, and then we're just going to start sewing. So the pattern that we're going to be sewing today is Simplicity 9010. This is one of Simplicity newer release patterns, and I just thought it was super cute. I love the back detail. That is what made me jump on this pattern. And I just thought it was really cute and perfect for the holidays, so that is why I grabbed it. I wanted to just make a little festive dress. So again, this is the pattern that we're going to be sewing along with, and the pattern I purchased in the size, the envelope is between the 14 and the 22. The fabric options for this pattern are crepe de chine, double georgette, ponte, silky types, and velvet. The fabric that I used was this crushed velvet that I found from my local Hobby Lobby. They had this in a couple different colors. So this is the fabric that I'm using, and again, it's from my local Hobby Lobby. It is a stretch crushed velvet fabric. The view that I decided to go with and make, and what we will be sewing along with in this video, is view B. And so the only notion that we need to purchase for view B, as well as all of them need elastic. So definitely make sure that you pick up elastic as well as coordinating thread. If you're going to go with view A, you will need a button for your back closure. As far as size go, I decided to cut the 45.5 for the bust, which will give me the size 16 for the bust. I merged that over to the 18 for the waist, and then for the hip, I went with the 22. And I did all of this like in my Instagram little highlights. I saved it. If you have Instagram, you can definitely check there and see me doing that. If you don't, then I have 2 videos here on my channel already that shows you that technique that I use, and you can watch the one for a jumpsuit here. And I'm sharing the one for the jumpsuit because the jumpsuit has a bodice and a bottom, the same as this dress has a bodice and a skirt, and I do that same technique. So definitely check that out if you want to see how I merge between the pattern lines so that the measurements for the pattern will fit me. So again, definitely make sure that you check out those videos if you have the same kind of issues when it comes to fitting. So that was just kind of like a quick preview. I just wanted to go through the fabric with you, all the size that I cut and the notions that you would need to pick up. So now we can go ahead and start sewing. So if you have this pattern, go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces, your fabric, transfer your markings, and let's start sewing. To begin sewing our dress, the first thing that we're going to do is work on our back pattern pieces, and we are going to do a row of stay stitching along the neck edges of the back piece. So here's the back here, and it has this like slanted edge here. We're going to do a stay stitch on both of these openings. Make sure that you have your directions close by so that you can see the direction of the arrow. That's the way that you want to do your stay stitching. And stay stitching for this pattern is done at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead and do our stay stitching now. Alright, I've just added stay stitching to the edge of the back piece, the neck edge of both. If you're going to be adding the tie for the back of the dress for view B or view C, you want to go ahead and do that now. You should have transferred a circle on your upper back piece if you plan to do the tie, and then you're going to follow along with steps 7, 8, and 9 to go ahead and sew the tie, flip it right side out, and baste it at that large circle that you transferred. So go ahead and do those steps if you plan to do the tie. If not, let's go ahead and grab our front piece now. For our front piece, we're going to go to the machine and do a row of stay stitching the same way that we did for the back. We're going to do it right here along the neck edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead and do our stay stitching for our front piece now. Alright, I just stitched my row of stay stitching at 1/4 inch around the front neck edge. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my back pattern pieces, and with right sides facing, I'm going to lay them together. And now I'm going to pin my front and back together, right sides facing along the shoulder seams. You should have transferred some notches. You want to match those up and pin in place. All right, now that you have your shoulder seams pinned together, we can go to the machine and we can stitch them at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead to the machine and do that now. All right, so now that we have our shoulder seams sewn, make sure that you give your seams a press. If you're using like a fabric similar to mine, a velvet or a crushed velvet, you want to make sure that you are using low pressing methods. So definitely do more of a steam as opposed to pressing. You will damage your fabric if you put your iron directly on a velvet or a crushed velvet. You can see I also finished off the edges with my serger. I was kind of on the fence if I wanted to do that or not, but I went ahead and did it, and I think it looks okay. So the next step is to go ahead and grab our package of single fold bias tape, 1/2 inch wide. This was one of the notions that we were supposed to purchase for this dress. And with right sides facing, you want to open out one of the sides of your bias tape, and you want to line it up so that the raw edges are even right here, just like so. And I'm gonna grab a pin and pin this in place. So just open out one end of your single fold bias tape. Make sure that you have the raw edges even and begin to pin it to your neck edge. If you would like to, you can press one of the opening edges open, or you can just, fold it out like I'm doing and just pin it in place. The choice is yours, but just continue pinning your bias tape right sides facing all the way along the neck edge of your bodice. All right, now that we have our bias tape pinned onto the neck edge of our bodice, now we can go to the machine and we can stitch it in a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead to the machine now and stitch this in place. All right, now that we have our bias tape sewn on and we've done the understitching, the next step is to go to the ironing board, and you want to go ahead and press the bias tape toward the inside. So go ahead and give yours a really good press. And then after you have it pressed, we can go to the machine and we can do a basting stitch right here along this inner fold of the bias tape. Once you have it basted, we can flip onto the outside and you can do a top stitch following along with the basting stitch. So let's go ahead to the machine. First, give it a good press and then do your basting stitch. And then on the outside, the right side of your fabric, you can do your top stitch following along with the basting stitch. Let's do that now. All right, so I just basted my bias tape toward the inside, and I basted it right along that inner fold of the bias tape. But one thing I noticed that as I was basting it, it looked really nice on this side, but once I got around the neck of the front, the neck edge of the front, and then the other back, it started to look a little wonky, and I didn't really love it. And then I also realized that I did not want a stitch to go around the edge of this crushed velvet. So I went back and I just got a needle and thread, and I just did a hand stitch. So I'm gonna go ahead and take out my basting stitch because I've already tacked it down with the needle and thread. I think that's gonna look a lot better for this crushed velvet. All right, so I just removed my basting stitch from the binding, and I love it so much more without having that stitch going along the neck edge of my dress. I just think it looks so much better. But like I said, depending on the type of fabric that you're working with, you may be fine with that. But if not, just go ahead and do a hand stitch to tack down your binding on the inside. And you can see right here. I didn't do a slip stitch. It's not invisible. You can see the little, you know, threads, the little tiny bite marks of the thread, but I think that's really nice and cute, so I really like that. So now once you have done your top stitch or your hand stitch, whichever you've done, we can move on to the next step, and that is to put the front and back right sides facing. And now we can stitch the underarm seams. So go ahead and grab your pins. You want to match up your notches and begin pinning your underarm seams in place. Now that we have the underarm seams pinned, we can go to the machine and stitch it at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And after we have it stitched, we're going to stitch again right over the same stitching just to reinforce it. So let's go ahead and do our stitching for our underarm seams now. All right, now that you have your underarm seam sewn, you want to go ahead and clip into your curves. So I've clipped into mine here. And then the next step is to go ahead and do the hem on your sleeve. If you are doing view C, then your hem allowance is just a 5/8 of an inch narrow hem. If you're doing view A and B, then your hem allowance is 1 1/4 inches. I am going to do my hem last because I'm going to hand sew it in place, but you just want to press your hem up. You want to fold in 1/4 inch and then just stitch close to the inner fold. So go ahead and do that if you're not going to be hand sewing yours, but like I said, I'm going to do mine toward the end. So the next step is to go ahead and flip our bodice right side out. All right, so now I have my bodice turned right side out, and we're going to lap the right over the left. First, I want to show you what my underarm seam looks like now that I have clipped into my curves. If you do not clip into your curves, it's going to look like the fabric is pulling right here. So definitely make sure that you clip into your curves so you have a nice curve right here up under your underarm. So next, we're going to do the right over the left. So I'm just going to lay my left side out. I'm going to take the right, and you should have transferred some small circles and notches, and we're just going to match those up. I'm going to grab some pins, and I'm just going to pin those in place. Now that you have it pinned, we can go to the machine and we can just baste these layers together. So let's go to the machine and do a basting stitch in these layers now. All right, now that you have your back layers basted together, we can put this to the side and start to work on the skirt. To begin working on our skirt, we're going to be starting with our back pattern piece, and I have gone ahead and pinned my center back seam together, and I have stopped my pins right here at the large circle that I transferred. So I'm going to begin stitching from here. I'm going to back stitch and stitch all the way to the top of the skirt and back stitch there as well. So go ahead and pin your center back seam of your skirt together, and let's go to the machine and stitch it in place now. All right, now that we have our center back seam sewn, now we can go ahead and grab our front piece and lay them right sides facing and go ahead and pin at the side seams. So here's my front, here's my back. I'm going to match up my notches on the side seams and pin them in place. Now that we have our front and back pinned together at our side seams, now we can go to the machine and go ahead and stitch them in place at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, now that we have our side seams sewn on our skirt, now you want to take it to your ironing board and go ahead and press your seams open flat. So don't forget to do that step. And once you have your seams pressed open, now you want to go ahead and grab your bodice. And we're going to put our bodice inside of our skirt right sides facing. So here is my bodice here, and here is the back. So I'm just going to slide this into here. You want to go ahead and find your side seams as well as your notches and begin to pin in place. All right, now that we have our bodice and skirt pinned together along the waistline seam, we're going to go to the machine and we're going to do a stitch first at 3/4 of an inch. And then after we have that one stitched all the way around, then we're going to stitch again 1/4 of an inch away from the raw edge, being sure to leave an opening so that we can feed our elastic through. So first we're going to go to the machine and we're going to do a 3/4 of an inch stitch all the way around. And then from the raw edge, we're going to come over 1/4 of an inch and stitch all the way around, being sure to leave an opening. So let's go ahead and do both of those stitches now. Now that we have stitched along our waistline seam, and then we've also stitched again to leave an opening right here, you want to go ahead and grab your elastic. I have gone ahead and I cut my elastic the length of the elastic guide. You should have cut out your elastic guide. Just measure up your elastic to that guide. You don't need to pull it. Just measure it up and then cut the length of the size that you cut for the dress. Go ahead and put a safety pin on one end of the elastic like I've done here. And now I'm just going to put the safety pin through the opening and pull it through. All right, now that I have pulled the elastic through, I'm going to go ahead and remove my safety pin. This is the time right now to go ahead and try on your dress to make sure that you are happy and comfortable with your elastic before you stitch it closed. I've tried mine on and I'm good to go. So now I'm going to go to the machine. I'm just going to lap this over and secure it in place. You don't want to sew the elastic like this. You want to make sure that you lap it over. So let's go ahead to the machine now and stitch the elastic together. Once you have secured your elastic, now you want to go ahead and just stitch your opening closed. Alright, so I've gone ahead and closed up the opening of my casing, and I also finished off the seam with my serger. The last step for us to do is to go ahead and do our hem. For the hem, you just want to go ahead and press up your hem allowance. If you would like to try on your dress and make sure that you're happy with the length, definitely do that before you stitch your hem in place. I'm going to go back and do the hem for my sleeve as well, and then we're all done with this dress. Well, that is all for this sew along, and I really do hope that you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them down for me below. I'll be more than happy to answer. If you make this dress, please share it with me. I would love to see your finished garment. You can share it with me on Instagram at Brittany J. Jones, or you can even email me at hello@brittanyjjones.com. And I also want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So I really do hope that you all just enjoy your time with family and friends, and I will see you all in the next video. Blessings, everyone. Bye.